You're feeling a little lost, confused. Maybe you are feeling scared or unsure, or maybe you are experiencing analysis paralysis. Whatever your situation, uncertainty is plaguing you and you're seeking direction or clarity or answers, hope, a sign, anything. If this is you and you're wondering why you're feeling this way, well, God might be asking you to trust him more. Hi, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Joey. I am a full-time work-from-home stay-at-home mama, an author, and the person who is here to encourage you to become the main character in your own life. Look, I know faith is a touchy subject for some, and if that's you, I'd still like to encourage you to stick around. If the term God makes you uncomfortable, maybe a term like spirit or universe, or insert any other terminology that doesn't give you such a visceral response in your body here might be a little bit more palatable for you. Before I dive in, I want to make something clear. While I identify as a Christian, I also strongly believe that we're all connected and that religion is just a vehicle of choice, but we're all actually on the same road. At the end of the day, I believe that it all leads to the same place. This is very much like an all are welcome kind of place, and it is absolutely never my intention to have anyone feel alienated by anything that I share. So while I'll be using the word God, please listen using whatever term in your mind makes you feel more comfortable. The first sign that God is asking you to trust him more is that you don't know what to do. You feel lost. You feel that overwhelming sense of uncertainty. That's when God is inviting us to surrender control. I'm going to assume that if you're anything like me, that you've been here before. And in the past, you maybe have used that as a sign to put the rubber to the road and start doing as much as you can. Start grasping at straws. You're frantically searching for a solution or for something. You don't like the way that it's making you feel, so that makes you feel out of control, and that's uncomfortable, and you're desperate to make it go away as fast as you can. So let me ask you this. How did you feel in those moments? Did the solution you forced offer you immediate peace and relief? Or were you still riddled with anxiety and the solution fell apart in the end and all you really accomplished was exhausting yourself? When we feel the most anxious and desperate for solution to whatever situation we're in, that's when we're being called to get still, to get quiet. The anxiety is like an internal alarm system letting us know that we've navigated off our path and we need to stop. When we get quiet and when we get still, we allow God the opportunity to guide us. Clarity comes in the calmness. Maybe this analogy will help. So I have a 2-year-old son, and he's obsessed with these trains right now. He has these trains that you press a button and they go on their own. And because toddlers like to do what toddlers like to do, the intrusive thought won the other day, and he placed this moving train on top of his very curly, luscious hair. And I'm sure you could probably guess what happened at that point. He was frantic and he was flailing, and all he was doing was making matters worse because his solution in that moment was to try to yank this moving train out of his tangled hair, and that was obviously only causing him more pain. And of course, the more he tugged, the more frantic he grew, and I couldn't offer any help in that moment because all I wanted to do was get my hands on him long enough to turn the train off, but he just kept getting more frantic. So I ended up having to model the behavior that I needed from him. So I hushed my voice and I sat crisscrossed on the ground and I invited him to come and sit with me. Obviously it took some coaxing at first, but eventually he stilled and his sobs got quiet and he was able to just sit and be still for a moment so I could finagle the train out of his hair with minimal cutting, I might add. Stop trying to yank the metaphorical train from your tangled hair. Sit still and let God untangle the mess. Number 2, you feel a healthy conviction to pray more. If you're more spiritual than you are religious, or if you aren't sure what you believe in, you might feel a little bit of a burning desire to seek comfort from a parent type figure. Maybe you're not exactly sure what that would even look like. A lot of times we get this feeling that settles on our heart, but we just keep ignoring it, trying to shake it off. We get very stuck in the I can do it myself mentality, and this is precisely when God starts to nudge us. And sometimes it might take a full-on sucker punch before we listen. Because the reality is, friend, we are not supposed to do it all ourselves. Life is not supposed to be this hard. If something feels hard, harder than it should be, and you're feeling lost and desperate for clarity and answers and direction, it's time to pray. Now, again, that word might elicit like an unpleasant feeling for you if you grew up rejecting religion or if you had a negative experience with organized religion. I get it. So maybe it would be more helpful if you thought of prayer a little differently, like a little more casually. I was an adult before I figured out a way to pray in a way that felt comfortable for me. It wasn't encouraging for me when I would see someone like spit out an elegant prayer on the fly. I admired it, sure, but it was also something that made me feel a little bit like less than or unworthy. Like maybe there was something wrong with me because I couldn't find the like uniquely perfect words in any given moment. Y'all, that's a skill. I know some are probably naturally gifted with it, but most have to practice at it. And regardless, prayer is not a contest, and it's absolutely okay if it's something that you feel like you want to keep private, like especially in the beginning. I pray through my journal, and as a writer, that might seem like a no duh kind of thing, and it certainly does that way to me now looking back at it, but it took me a really long time to find a method that felt really natural to me. It's okay if it feels clunky or a little bit awkward at first, but ultimately it's just a conversation, a casual conversation. If it helps to think of God or source or universe or whatever it is that you're calling it like a good old friend, then do that. But the reason you're feeling this tug, that heaviness on your heart, that conviction to pray is because lack of prayer is actually a lack of trusting God. That's hard to hear, I know, but we're all guilty of it sometimes. We get comfortable and complacent and suddenly we spend a little less time in prayer. We assume that God knows that we're thinking about him and that we desire the relationship that we want with him, but that's not true. That nagging feeling that is literally telling you that God is asking you to trust him more. Sign number 3, you're experiencing a season of testing. Y'all, this is something that we are very familiar with here in the Hodges household. My husband and I joke, especially through the last several years, that like we do disaster really well. And strangely, when that happens, we end up feeling this like sense of excitement whenever things start to go a little bit off the rails, because we just know that that's when God really loves to show up and show off. A season of testing is one of God's little nudges, or maybe this one is delivered in the form of that sucker punch that I mentioned earlier. The truth is, God will move you, but oftentimes things, especially things that you have like forced into place, have to come crumbling down around you. It feels like a disaster, I know, and it feels like you're broken. But I can promise you, God is doing something beautiful. He's doing beautiful work in the midst of that brokenness. I always know when things go wrong that God is trying to tell us something or he's trying to move us. He uses our seasons of testing for our good. James 1:2-4 and Romans 5:3-5 say that God uses the pressures of our life to cause us to seek his presence. He's calling you to him. When my son gets scared and when he's sad or when he's unsure or his toy breaks or his food falls on the floor, he runs to me. He wants me to fix it, and I'm happy to do that for him as his mom. So when things feel broken, fix your eyes on God. You might be thinking, okay, but these seasons of trial are like getting a little old. So let me remind you, you will be served the same lesson over and over again until you finally learn from it. So ask yourself, what is God trying to teach you here? All right, friends, with that, I'm gonna go ahead and sign off. Thanks again so much for being here. I really appreciate all of the kindness and support that you guys have shown me the last several months. If you wouldn't mind like heading down below and doing all of the YouTube-y things like giving this video a thumbs up or subscribing, go ahead and leave me a comment down below and let me know what, if any, you've experienced of these signs. And I love to connect and encourage you on this journey to becoming the main character in your own life. Thanks again, and I'll see you all again very, very soon. Bye!